All right, so first of all, thank you to all of the stoic people that are still here listening to us at 6:15 while everybody else is probably partying and already getting drunk in Vegas. We're very thankful. First of all, my name is Loris Degioanni. I'm a CTO and founder at Sysdig. Today, we are going to have a session with Arkose Labs. I'm here with Glen. The goal is to learn essentially from their journey and get a real use case from somebody that has worked on implementing security for AWS and for a modern cloud-native infrastructure. Glen, maybe do you mind introducing yourself quickly? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about what Arkose Labs does.
Yeah, I'm Glen Arrowsmith, VP of IT and Security Engineering at Arkose Labs. And we straight over to the next one. So what's Arkose Labs first? I won't give you a full sales pitch because one, I'm not a salesperson. You can tell by my long title. But Arkose Labs is a bot mitigation detection company. So we've got a few customers that you may recognize up there. But when you buy Arkose Labs, you're not just buying our product, you're also buying our team. We've got a managed service that will monitor bot attacks and do everything that they can until the attack is mitigated. They'll keep going until it's no longer economically viable for any criminal or fraudster to be attacking, well, you. So they move on to a less protected target. So that's essentially what we do. We keep a close eye on what criminals do as well. And did you know we actually have one working for us? I don't think I told you that.
No, I didn't know that.
We've got Brett Johnson, who worked for, who was once on the FBI most wanted list. Godfather of cybercrime, they call him. We hired him as the chief criminal officer. He teaches us how to think like a criminal, their motivations. We can stay one step ahead of the fraudsters. Okay,
what I know now is that sometime in my career I want a job title, chief criminal officer.
Believe it or not, he failed his background check.
I don't know if they will give me the title because I'm a criminal?
You got to go to jail first.
Yeah, exactly.
A couple of times.
If I will have to go to jail. Do you mind explaining a little bit like how your product works in terms of like you were saying it's part of the product, part of the service that you offer, but what do I buy from you, you know?
Implementation-wise, it's as simple as including a JavaScript library and then sending a session ID off to us. The best use case is on like a sign-up, sign-in sort of flow. Most of the time, you will never see us. Like you see our customers, but you will never see your product unless there's something really dodgy about you. You know, you're registering 10 accounts in an hour or something like that that will flag our enforcement challenge. And it's a really seamless experience for users, even if you do get flagged. It's not like those, choose the buses or, where's the stop sign. It's actually intuitive because we're not training AI. We're just trying to figure out if you're human or not.
Maybe one last question about Arkose. Where are you based and how many are you? Just to give a sense to people, the geographic and also the size of the company.
We're a Brisbane startup. We came out of Brisbane. We sent our CEO over about 5.5 years ago to San Francisco to start up the sales, marketing, and finance side over here. Since then, we've grown to 250 plus, and we're spread out across, I think, 8 countries now.
So you are from Australia. I'm originally from Italy. We sort of got together in Vegas because sort of in the middle. All right. Maybe before we go into your journey, few words about Sysdig. Sysdig is the company. I'm the CTO of the company. I'm also the founder of the company. Sysdig is a market leader in security for modern cloud-based applications. We specialize in security for containers, cloud, and Kubernetes-based applications. Sysdig is a company that is based in San Francisco, California. We have a distributed team across the globe. We also have a distributed customer base. We tend to specialize in supporting organizations, big and small, in their journey to the cloud, offering them both security that covers the whole life cycle of their application and visibility and monitoring for their application. So when you buy Sysdig, you essentially buy a very complete turnkey solution that offers you, I was going to say everything, but everything is never possible, but a lot of what you need to run safely and confidently your applications, especially when they are modern applications that are based on cloud, AWS, containers, Kubernetes, and so on. Sysdig tends to support the biggest workloads in the world, so we have customers with thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of instances on AWS. And we offer a solution that is heavily focused on open source. So Falco, which is in this slide, is our cloud-native security tool that is also the core of our commercial product. And we have the philosophy that we approach essentially security for the modern world with a community-first philosophy. All right, enough introductions. Maybe, Glenn, can you start by talking a little bit to us about your journey? Especially here, you know, we're here to talk about security, cloud security. So can you tell us a little bit about the growth of Arkose and how that impacted essentially your approach to security?
Definitely. So when I was hired at Arkose Labs 5.5 years ago, there was only 5 people. I was actually hired as the VP of engineering, so
When engineering was only you?
Yes, it was all me. The CEO handed it over to me. I was the entire engineering department and operations as well, so yeah. It was a very exciting time, but we had some really big customers back then, like EA Games and a few airlines. So that really drove our growth. And we, since then, have grown to 200 plus employees in like a four-year span. But we were so customer driven. Every time we would have a new customer prospect, they'd usually ask for something, you know, need a particular change. Or even when we get a new type of attack that we haven't seen before, we'd have to change our product rapidly to be able to defend against it. And it really made our product quite robust. But because we were so, you know, customer driven and, well, attacker driven, there wasn't too much focus on security, believe it or not. As we grew, our engineering department did start, identifying security issues as they come across them, and then they would make a ticket, chuck it on the backlog. Hopefully, it'll come up on the next sprint, but because we're so driven, the product people kind of wouldn't let us work on the security issues.
So at the time, this responsibility for security was completely under the engineering team.
Yeah, it was everyone's responsibility. Who's heard that term, security is everyone's responsibility, right? Have you also heard of the bystander effect? Yeah, I'll test it out if you want. If you're a little bit bored later on, lay down on the curb in Vegas and see how long it takes for someone to come by and check on you. Everyone else just thinks it's someone else's job. It takes a while. Haven't done it myself, but you know. So yeah, that would happen a lot with security. Someone would see an issue, they wouldn't even know who to go to see, like, has this already been reported? So you would have multiple reports of the same thing, or just no reports of that particular thing, and then no time to work on it.
And at that point, your infrastructure was all in the cloud?
Yeah, all in the cloud. We're cloud.
You started from the beginning, completely cloud native and cloud-based from day one,
yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did it also impact you from the security point of view, the fact that from day one, you started essentially without baggage, right? So you were saying the engineering team was responsible for that, and it was on the best effort, essentially, situation. But the fact that this was all cloud-based impacted your approach to security so early on, or it was so early that it didn't matter?
Well, very, very early on, I'll keep a good eye on security. I'll take into account some risks, and we'll fix them as well in the very early days. But as the teams got bigger, and I couldn't keep an eye on every single release going out, that's when things started to get a little bit more open. More issues opened up, and some developers would end up doing a couple of things, sometimes. An engineer might have a little bit of time and go, oh, we need to turn on guard duty so we know for intrusion detection. But then they get busy. They don't design the process to go check the logs or turn on the alerting or deal with any of those. So they're on, but no one's looking at them.
I think that's very common at that size, when everybody's so busy and there's still no formal approach to security. So you know that you need it, you turn it on, but then you don't have the process or the resources, right, to actually follow it.
Yeah. Maybe like an InfoSec sort of questionnaire comes in by a new customer asking, what's your security process for like this particular thing, and then someone quickly goes and turns on like container scanning or something like that. Sees a whole bunch of alerts, and then you can't squash any of them as well, like ECR.
Pretend
alerts.
you didn't see it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's on. The approach was absolutely scattered. The intent was good, but the execution wasn't there. It wasn't effective. So we needed to change. Pretty rapidly when we started noticing.
In terms of, so you were talking about guard duty and so on, so that's how you started, and then, let's say, did you compose something essentially, or how did it evolve at the time?
If you swap over.
Also, I would be curious to understand, the company size, it's potentially interesting for the audience to understand at which size things evolved and how.
Yeah, that's a good question. I should have probably checked out the employee count at that point. At that point, like this is around 2020 that I'm talking about. At that point, I moved over from VP of Engineering to VP of IT and started to build out that org. And I think we're at about 100 to 150 odd employees.
Okay.
So that would have been around 50 engineers, probably a little bit more, maybe 80. So when I took that new role in IT, I also started to have a little bit more look around our security, because I was working very closely with the InfoSec people. And I knew where a whole lot of the skeletons were buried as well. Started looking at things and kind of realizing how ineffective they were. So we decided to create an IT security team. So I think it was mid-2021. We hired 2 IT security engineers and kind of set them on the task. One of the big things that we did first was, make sure CloudTrail's on in all regions, connect that up to a SIEM. So we had some basic alerting. We used Microsoft Sentinel. We got some rudimentary sort of alerting. It's all rule-based and very inflexible, but it was there. The next thing we started doing was we started using Security Hub, AWS's Security Hub, and started using that to kind of figure out our cloud posture and where all of our holes are. And kind of we fixed a whole lot of things. We had a whole lot of freedom to go in and just anything in staging or development, just go fix it yourself. And we moved very fast, and we fixed a whole lot of things. Production will go through like the whole development process and get it fixed. But
tell me a little bit about fix a whole lot of things mean. So at that point, what was your focus? Because you have your applications, you have your infrastructure, you have your users. So what was your priority at that point in terms of what to address first?
Cloud posture. So things like open SSH ports. There was a ton of them, mostly in development accounts. So not so important. But those development accounts also had like access to other things. So we had to make sure, and like some production data was scattered around as well. Like we need to get this locked down on all regions and all environments. So yeah, cloud posture was the big focus then, like network security, that sort of stuff. So Security Hub did help us there, but we're having a whole lot of reporting issues as well. We have like almost everything in our infrastructure was auto-scaling groups. We're dealing with a lot of load. So during the night, we'd have hundreds more servers, and then during the day, someone's day, hundreds less servers. Every time we got a new server, we would have security issues fire off in Security Hub. Hundreds of them.
Christmas tree light.
Yeah, because it's scaling up. It's a new server, and it wasn't smart enough to realize that it's part of an auto-scaling group. Maybe it should have rolled that up and put the finding on the auto-scaling group. Like in the end, the issue that it found wasn't even all that important. So we determined that we'll just ignore it for a while and prioritize other things. But it was just that noise. It was so painful. I ended up writing a script to download all of the findings in Security Hub and filter out the noisy ones that we didn't care about and upload that data into a Google Sheet so I could actually do reporting on our progress as well. So, that's what we use for our quarterly OKRs.
Fancy.
Yeah, it was painful. I did not like to script that, but yeah.
Feels like at least, with my role at Sysdig, I talk to a lot of customers, a lot of end users, also a lot of open source users of tools like our open source Falco. And it feels like noise is consistently at the top of the pain list for pretty much everybody. So that resonates with you.
Yes, definitely.
Same with you.
Even the ECR scanning, you can't say like this is a known issue in like the ECR scanning and say like just stop alerting on it. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So very painful.
Did this noise was this noise hitting mostly your team, the security team, or was it something that was also going to the developers?
Yeah, it would be both. And because of that problem, no one looked at it anymore.
Yeah.
Because, like a new scan happens and it fails because of the things that we don't care about. We've looked at it and, determined that it's not an issue that actually affects us, like a file system issue or something like that.
Sounds a lot like me screaming at my kids.
Yeah.
No one cares anymore because I do it so much. All right, so how did things evolve at that point?
Well, after we got a good handle on our cloud posture, we needed to expand, find a better tool. Like the Amazon tools could only take you so far, and we came across Sysdig. This is the hero of the story, right? Sysdig was able to standardize all of our reporting and add to it as well, like the runtime security that just doesn't exist until a couple of days ago, so they announced. But it didn't exist in AWS at the time. We expanded out into Sysdig, Unify efforts, and we found a ton of benefits like reporting and prioritization and being able to filter things out. Even our SIEM, we migrated all of our alerts over to Sysdig as well because it was just so good at handling them.
How do you approach prioritization? Because, of course, tools like Sysdig make a lot of effort to essentially try to bubble up what's important for you. What are your criteria, and your team's criteria to decide, okay, this is important and should be addressed now versus this can be fixed later?
That's a very good question. So even though like a critical issue may be found on a server, that doesn't necessarily mean that any of our code reaches that bit of that vulnerable package or library or whatever it is. So a whole lot of the time, it's not important. With, even though it gets identified in like Security Hub, we would spend a whole lot of time researching it, or like we may even throw it over to the fence to a developer and say, hey, this is critical, go work on it. And then they spend a whole lot of time researching it and realize that they just wasted a whole bunch of time realizing it because it's not actually being used at all. So with Sysdig, forgotten what it's called now, the something insights?
Risk Spotlight.
Yeah. Risk Spotlight, that's the one. Yeah, it'll tell you if it's actually in use or not. And you can also filter by fixability as well. Like some things have a vulnerability, but they don't have a patch yet. Yeah. So why throw the vulnerability over to the engineers to go fix, or even like our team to go fix, when there isn't a fix?
There's nothing you can do, essentially.
It's just a whole lot of wasted time.
Security in the modern world of, clouds and containers and Kubernetes can mean many things. There's the like shift left component, there's the runtime that we were discussing right now, there's compliance and so on. I'm interested, especially in a company like yours that offers essentially security protection to the users. What, among all of these functions, how do you prioritize where you invest resources and time for your team?
Well, since probably 2020, since the pandemic hit, the supply chain hadn't been important to businesses before. But also since, did you want to change the slides too? Who's heard of a supply chain attack? Who's heard of some like big ones in the news that affected a ton of companies? Well, we're a supplier to a ton of big customers. So if we end up getting hacked and someone's able to, the absolute worst case is deploy malicious code from us, like that is a big problem. Like they can hack Microsoft out of that. So knowing our stack is secure is super important, not just to us, but to other customers. Like
you're part of the supply,
yes,
essentially.
we are part of the supply chain. And a high-risk one. Like when Log4j came out, we got a ton of questions from different customers asking us, are you vulnerable? What servers are running Java? What versions of your Java? Tell me about the Log4j, version number. How's it configured? That was extremely painful. I really wish we had Sysdig back then, because that would have been able to help us tell like how our supply chain is and where all these vulnerabilities are. At that time, we had to do a whole lot of searching manually.
Yeah, and I find that a lot of security is just understanding what you have, and sort of avoid spots of where you don't have visibilities, which is easy on paper, but can be pretty complicated, especially with the complexities of modern security. So sometimes just understanding, okay, there's a new vulnerability, where is it? Requires pretty sophisticated tools.
Exactly. You can't secure what you don't know you have. And especially with Kubernetes these days, it's even more obscured from people. So
by the way, talking about Kubernetes, are you guys users of Kubernetes?
Yeah. We've been making a big shift from ECR over to Kubernetes now.
Okay. Yeah. How's your experience?
It's fantastic. Yeah, we're really liking it. Some new learning curves, but yeah, it's good.
All right. One thing that people might be interested in is in learning, based on your experience, essentially, the progress reporting, right? It's very important for a correct security posture to be able to report your progress and your findings, both internally and externally. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. And it's one of those pain points as well if you're a technical person, you really don't want to spend time on your reporting either. I know I don't. I want to get in there and fix things. But the reporting that we do, it's not all out of Sysdig. We report on open incidents that haven't been fixed yet and their priorities. The amount of tickets that are open and assigned to engineers and haven't got done or have. What else? The incidents when they pop up, a security alert, how many of those are happening, and also when engineers report things. We're really trying to reward that behavior when an engineer reports a security issue to us, because I give them bonus lead points, if you're familiar with bonus lead points. Even if they're the ones who did it. We report on that, and it's great to see that in security engagement.
And these reported by the engineers would be bugs, like security issues in the code, essentially, that come out from reviews or stuff like that?
Yeah, or doing something as silly as like committing a secret key into GitHub or something like that. They'll end up reporting it before a scan and stuff happening as well.
In theory, can detect for you, by the way, hopefully. But I'm very interested in this. So what set of incentives, because this is pretty powerful, having actually the team looking into this kind of stuff. And so I'm curious to learn from you, how do you structure it? What kind of incentives do you give? You were talking about points and so on, but how do you convince a busy developer to become your partner, as the security team?
I make it easy for them. They just know to message me or someone on my team, say like, I found this, can you look into it, or is this a problem? And I try and do as much of it as I can, or get one of my team members to do as much of it as they can without involving them. And then I give them some bonus lead points, give them some rewards for and recognition for reporting something. Even if they did something wrong, we praise them and try and...
Yeah, that's fantastic, because, again, issues and bugs are there, they happen, having a culture where even if it's your fault, you feel comfortable going and reporting it. Yes. And maybe you get, you get positive feedback. To me, sounds like culturally an extremely great approach.
It's been a long time coming. We've worked on it hard and made sure that security is top of mind in company all hands and stuff like that, and awareness as well. I do a lot of training internally on security issues, hacking and that sort of stuff, and phishing.
Okay, tell me a little bit about the company All Hands. So during the All Hands in the company, you also talk about, do this kind of reporting and recognition for the security posture?
I do, we do a bit. The department reports will report on security issues found and try and praise people if, it's a really big one. But then other all hands, people get opportunities to do small talks. So I've done one about a big phishing campaign that was particularly targeting Okta and Okta users, and how a few big companies got hacked, and I won't name them on camera. But just training and awareness.
And just one more question about reporting progress. You were saying at the beginning, your tool was a spreadsheet.
Yes, a script pulling down data.
Exactly. How is that evolved? And especially in terms of tooling, what do you use?
I don't run my script anymore. But just Jira reporting covers a lot of it, because we create the tickets from Sysdig's findings, and then we can just report on what's assigned, what's opened in Jira. But if we need to do more deep dive reporting, sometimes my boss will want some nice pretty graphs and stuff, so I'll send him lots of screenshots out of Sysdig.
And is it like we were talking about life cycle? Is it for the whole life cycle that you do this kind of reporting, or do you focus more like on posture versus like runtime? Or is it a mix?
Yeah, it is a mix. Yeah, posture gets highlighted a lot because it's a good view of where you are now, and if there's like any real big open risks, there's not so much anymore. But yeah, looking at things historically, that's a little bit more motivating to, you know, it shows how far we've come and how much we fixed. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Maybe let's talk a little bit about DevSecOps. Actually, maybe before we do, let's stop again just to give a chance if anybody has a question to ask the question. All right.
Don't feel shy.
Yeah, DevSecOps, very important, very top of mind for many teams nowadays. So tell us a little bit about your
Actually,
approach to DevSecOps.
I wanted to ask particularly about DevSecOps. Who in the audience company is truly doing DevSecOps? Does anyone say that they are doing DevSecOps and in your technical opinion you're not doing it properly? Or that doesn't happen? No one? It's just DevOps out here? Okay, that's interesting. But DevSecOps, we're starting to adopt it, and that's more collaboration between the security team and the engineers. Technically, we were DevSecOps, where the security was everyone's responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you're few people, everything is under engineering.
Yeah.
By definition, you're DevSecOps.
Yeah. Tell
you're
the higher ups.
DevSec and Ops.
Yeah. Tell the higher ups we're DevSecOps, and they'll be happy. Because we don't have a security department. We're obviously DevSecOps, but in fact, yeah, it just wasn't working. So yeah, building out that security department to kind of enable the developers, give them the tools, give them the insights, give them the priorities on what things they should be working on, is kind of how you scale. We want to keep our security team nice and lean. We want to make sure that the ownership is on the engineers, and that's what we're slowly building out.
One other topic that is, I'm assuming, very top of mind for everybody is, shift-left security and CI/CD. So again, that is sort of related to DevSecOps in terms of, with CI/CD security, in theory, a developer gets much more involved in the security process and ideally gets feedback pretty early on, right? So tell us a little bit about your approach to shift-left security.
Well, got to highlight the problem, and I feel like a lot of companies probably still do this, but who's had a release that they've done and then a security guy or girl has picked up a security issue that you've introduced after you've released and you've had to roll back? Anyone in the audience? Do we have many developers in the audience? Michael has, that's good. I know I have. And that's never fun for anyone. Like it feels shameful, like, oh no, I've put in this big regression, and you don't want to ever be that person who has done that. But instead, you've got to move it further up the development cycle. And the next logical step is release gates. So before the release goes out, you have security have a look at the release and make sure that there's no security issues. But that's just a step in the right direction. That's not all the way you want to go, because that's still painful for the process. Like a developer, so proud of his code, it's gone through QA, and then a security person comes in and goes, no, can't do that. Start the cycle all over again, still very painful, and everyone sees it, and it looks all embarrassing. A far better way is to try and get those things caught as early on as possible. And the earliest that you can really catch it with any sort of scanning tools is on the pull request. Before even a code review is done, get tools in there to start scanning the code, scan the container that's getting built, scan the source code that's being, changed, scan the dependencies. And Sysdig can help out with all of that as well. But that way, if it passes all the checks in the pull request before anyone's looked at it, that developer is like, "Whoa, dodged a bullet there." They're feeling good, like they can fix that before anyone else starts looking at it, and it's a solid process for them. Like they haven't wasted anyone else's time, they haven't wasted QA's time.
And you can do that at a time when you're not under pressure. Like you are in your development cycle, you have time, you don't have maybe like a release that is dependent on that or something
or told customers that this release is going out this day. It's all
exactly.
QA, it's going out,
and then you get that security. That tends to frustrate. One question that I have is about. In general, I again, based on my conversation, I'm finding that shift left security and the management of vulnerabilities is always a little bit of an art and requires like deciding essentially how aggressive you want to be, right? It tends to be extremely challenging to be like at zero vulnerabilities. It's a little bit like email, It's very hard to be at zero unread in the email. So what is your philosophy for this? Are you like a zero kind of organization, or you try to essentially prioritize what's important?
We're always working towards zero, but you will never get to zero. And the way I know that we'll never get to zero is because, Sysdig security, risk spotlight?
Spotlight, yeah.
Well, that can actually tell me, what vulnerabilities are fixable. I spoke about it a little bit before, but there are heaps of vulnerabilities identified that are just not fixable. So I'll never get to zero unless we take things out of the stack completely. But there's a lot of the time, no point. If it's unreachable and unfixable, why fix it?
Yeah.
The
unreachable is another important part, and I think that Risk Spotlight does is it puts together the data that is coming from the runtime feed of data that is coming from the agents with the vulnerabilities that have been detected by the scanning engine, and is essentially able to pinpoint one vulnerability and say, this vulnerability, you have it maybe, it's a critical vulnerability, but it's not being loaded. Your containers include essentially like this dependency, but they're actually not loading it into memory. And we found that such functionality can really decrease the number of vulnerabilities that you are that you have to address to magnitude orders, essentially, because very often people use container images that are relatively fat with a lot of stuff inside, but then this stuff doesn't really run, it's just sitting there. So being able to start maybe from 1,000 vulnerabilities and go down to 10, because those are the 10 that are actually loaded in memory, executed, maybe in your production infrastructure, is something that typically resonates a lot with people that are exposed to this kind of pain.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't done this yet, but it occurs to me I could give probably platform engineers a big list of things that are on the box that are never being used, maybe remove them. So
yeah, exactly.
Release times and scaling times are faster.
That's the next step, for sure. Talking about engineers, maybe one last question, then I want to leave it again, a little bit of space to audience. So just learn a little bit about you, about the people side of shift left security, and a little bit about your contract with engineers. So you were saying the sooner you're able to give them feedback, the happier everybody is. Essentially, the question is, does it work for you?
It does. We don't have that process rolled out on all of our repos yet, but we're getting there. And you got to do a lot of collaboration as well. If we were to just roll this out as like a pull request blocker on every single one of our repos, we would have a riot from engineers. But you do it piece by piece, you're engaging with the engineers. We have an engineering security champions group that meets every 2 weeks. So yeah, we start putting on piece by piece, turn on, blocking in the code review stage on one repo, ask them for feedback in 2 weeks' time. They'll say, no problems, all good. Or sometimes they'll say, had this problem, what's going on here? And, you talk to them about it, and sometimes they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, let's keep going. So you just kind of push and pull and slowly move it out to avoid a riot, because when all the developers all of a sudden can't release code because some unreachable thing is, got a vulnerability, then, you're not even going to have a riot from the developers. It's probably the CEO is going to be knocking on your door.
What does an engineering security champion do?
Well, we meet every 2 weeks, and we end up discussing open issues, some of the changes that we're putting in as well, to, like I was saying, the CI/CD process. Sometimes they have questions about open vulnerabilities that their teams have been working on. So yeah, we just kind of collaborate together, share knowledge.
And how many of these do you have per engineer?
Pardon?
How many of these champions do you have per engineer?
One per team.
One per team?
Yeah.
And the team is how big? Just to get a sense of how big are these teams?
About 5 people.
5 people.
It depends on the
Okay.
team, but yeah.
Okay. So let's say, suppose on an 100 people security engineering team, you would have the ballpark of 10 to 20 of these.
Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting as well to have somebody who's the essentially champion for the team that can be responsible for this and can act as a bridge essentially. So that is part of it also ties to the conversation about DevSecOps essentially.
Yeah. And they'll tell you as well if anyone else on their team are having problems with the tooling.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
All right. In that case, I just want to thank everybody in the audience and again, appreciate being here. Hopefully, this journey and this story was useful not only from the point of view of maybe learning products, but also understanding the approach from somebody that really went from like 0 to a decently sizable team. For sure, I learned a lot, so thank you very much, Glen. And have a great rest of your conference, and see you around.